Welcome back to the deep dive. We often look at these massive global industries, tech, finance, huge political shifts.
Right.
But sometimes, I think the most insightful stuff, it's found right where people live,
Mm-hmm.
facing these really hyper-local problems.
Uh-huh.
And so today we're doing a deep dive into the business narrative of a very specialized regional company. So like chimney services out of Portland, Maine.
It might sound, a bit niche at first, but for anyone analyzing how essential services actually survive and thrive, this is a fascinating case study in adaptation.
I think so.
The sources we have detail a company whose their whole operational philosophy is dictated by one central, relentless antagonist.
What a weather.
The harsh Maine climate, exactly.
So our mission today is to go beyond just a list of services. We want to extract the essential components, what makes a company like this a trusted partner, not just a contractor.
Yeah.
We're looking at their expertise, how their services evolved, and the strategic necessity of their mission. And it all starts with that central environmental tension.
And what's so interesting here is that the location, it doesn't just make the job harder, it fundamentally changes the job description itself.
How so?
Well, chimney maintenance in, say, a moderate climate might just be about preventing creosote buildup.
Standard cleaning.
Standard cleaning. But in Maine, where you're dealing with these aggressive winter conditions, the job becomes essential. High-stakes structural defense.
That is the cornerstone of their whole story. So,
Yeah.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
What is the foundational environmental challenge that really drives the need for this kind of specialized and, let's be honest, expensive service?
It's the constant cycling between extremes, what we call the freeze-thaw cycle.
The freeze-thaw, right.
The sources are really explicit about this. They highlight the combination of heavy, persistent snow, which is then followed by freezing rain, and then those dramatic temperature swings.
So one day it's above freezing, the next it just plummets.
Exactly. And most construction materials, especially masonry, they are just deeply vulnerable to that kind of volatility.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, just think about the basic physics of water. When water gets into mortar or brick, and all masonry is porous, to some degree,
Sure.
and then it freezes, it expands by about 9%.
Which is a lot of force.
And there's an incredible amount of pressure from within, just pushing the materials apart. And when that happens hundreds of times over a single winter, those tiny microscopic cracks, they become visible damage, spalling, and then eventually structural failure.
So it's not this slow, gentle decay we might imagine. It's an aggressive, cyclical, physical tearing apart of the structure itself.
That's it, exactly. And the most vulnerable points, the ones Select Chimney Services has to focus on, are the exterior components.
Like the crown.
The chimney crown, the mortar joints, and crucially, the flashing.
Okay, the flashing is that metal seal where the chimney goes through the roof.
Right. And if that seal fails because of an ice dam or just thermal stress, you get massive water intrusion into your attic, into the ceiling structure.
Which leads to mold, rot, all kinds of problems far beyond just the chimney itself.
Exponentially worse problems. And this is why their service has to go beyond basic sweeping. They're literally mitigating an environmental structural attack.
It really speaks to the technical depth required. They're not just sending a guy with a brush.
No.
They're sending a professional who understands, hydroscopic damage and structural load bearing. And the need for this it's geographically massive.
Yes. The source material really emphasizes their broad regional footprint. They serve Portland, South Portland, sure, but their reach goes well inland.
Towns like Gray and Windham.
Gray, Windham, all the way up to Augusta, and even into the mountainous regions near Bethel.
That's a substantial service radius, logistically, for specialized labor. What does that tell us about the market?
It tells us two key things. First, the problem is widespread. Severe winters don't exactly respect city limits.
Right.
And second, it suggests there just aren't enough qualified specialists in those smaller inland towns to handle the demand.
So it forces these larger, centralized expert operations like Select to cover huge distances.
That logistical challenge alone requires some really robust staffing and training.
And the sources also mention that they're operating in a landscape with other established names like Larrabee or Seaside Chimney Service. We should probably analyze that competitive aspect.
I think that just reinforces the specialization, the high barrier to entry. This is not a commodity market.
Not at all.
When you have competitors who are also locally trusted, it proves that the demand for real expertise is stable and deep. It's not about who's cheapest, it's about who can guarantee structural integrity against these specific local threats.
So the competition forces them to define a really rigorous standard of quality to differentiate.
Precisely.
And if we connect that back to the bigger picture, it really shows how these hyper-local threats
Right.
drive this highly specific, almost regulated expertise. They have to understand not just general masonry, but how specific local building methods.
Yeah, like historic Portland brickwork versus a newer suburban home.
Right, how they respond differently to that constant freezing.
They are, in a sense, masters of localized decay.
I agree. Which brings us right to the solution side of the equation. If the threat is comprehensive structural decay from water and ice, the solution has to be just as comprehensive.
It has to be.
And this is where it gets really interesting, because this spectrum of solutions clearly defines the gap between just a general contractor and a true chimney specialist.
The range of services is a direct response to the complexity of the damage we just described. They start, of course, with the basics.
The cleaning and an inspection.
Right, the seasonal maintenance. That's foundational. But they pivot really quickly to addressing the consequences of the main environment.
So what are the main structural concerns they tackle after that basic sweep?
Immediately, they're focused on water management and safety performance. So that means solving persistent smoke issues, which often relate to a damaged or improperly sized flue,
Okay.
and critically dedicated repair of water damage. This can mean rebuilding entire sections of the chimney that have spalled or cracked beyond repair.
Let's detail those restoration services. Beyond just rebuilding, what are the specific technical interventions that need a specialist's skill?
Well, there are three critical technical areas. First is flue liner installation.
Okay.
The flue liner is that critical pathway inside the chimney. It vents the combustion gases. And in cold climates, these often degrade or crack from thermal shock or moisture.
And replacing that is essential for safety, isn't it?
It's everything. A new liner prevents those superheated gases from igniting the surrounding woodwork in your home. It's a huge liability issue if it's compromised.
It's the difference between an efficient fireplace and a potential house fire.
That's exactly it. Okay, second, the chimney caps and covers. This might sound simple, but the cap is your first line of defense against rain and snow getting in.
Right?
So selecting the right material and ensuring a perfect watertight seal is paramount to preventing water from just flowing down inside the flue where it causes all this hidden damage.
And the third area, which you mentioned briefly before, is that specific masonry repair skill.
Tuck pointing?
Tuck pointing.
Yes.
We need to clarify this because this task is what really elevates them to structural experts.
It is. Tuck pointing is where specialized masonry knowledge meets structural engineering necessity. It's the process of restoring the integrity of the brick joints.
How do they do that?
They meticulously grind out the old, decayed mortar, the part that's most susceptible to that freeze-a-thaw damage we talked about, and then they pack the joints with new, specialized mortar.
And I'm guessing the mortar composition here matters a lot, right? It can't just be a standard mix.
It absolutely cannot. Given the thermal stress in Maine, they have to use specific mortar mixes formulated for low absorption and high resistance to sulfate attack and freeze-thaw.
And if they don't?
Improperly mixed mortar will just fail again within a few seasons. When they talk about full masonry repairs, they're talking about making sure the exterior envelope of your home is perfectly sealed and structurally sound for decades.
They also talk about preventative maintenance and waterproofing. If the problem is water getting in, why is waterproofing needed after a repair like tuck pointing?
Because masonry, even the best masonry, is still porous. Waterproofing agents are these specialized, breathable sealants.
Breathable.
Yeah, they reduce the rate of absorption but still allow any trapped moisture inside the chimney to escape. It's like a necessary insurance layer to prevent that whole costly cycle from just starting all over again.
This whole evolution of services seems highly logical, and the sources connect this expertise directly back to the company's R story.
Right.
They didn't just show up with this massive service list.
That's a key point. The narrative suggests the company was founded in Portland, driven by a passion for service, but their offerings expanded organically.
Out of necessity.
Out of necessity. They saw these real-world specific failures, the persistent water leaks, the cracked flues, the smrek issues that demanded complex structural fixes, not just a cleaning.
So that real-world feedback loop is what shaped their identity.
It's what moved them from a cleaning service to a comprehensive home protection specialist. Their expertise is built on thousands of these small, specialized battles against the Maine environment.
And that foundation of blending technical skill with straightforward communication, the ability to tell a homeowner exactly what's structurally wrong and why, that's how they built trust.
Which raises an important analytical question.
Go on.
If the work is so technical and it often involves these hidden structural failures, how do you overcome the inherent information asymmetry between the expert and the customer?
Right. How do you trust what you can't see?
Exactly. And this is where their claimed business philosophy becomes absolutely critical.
Perfect. So if we were to synthesize their business philosophy, let's go beyond the marketing language. Let's analyze the strategic necessity of the pillars they claim to be built on.
The core mission statement lays the groundwork. It's to protect homes and enhance the safety and performance of chimneys through dependable service and expert care,
Okay, so it's centered on safety and reliability.
which directly addresses the high risk of catastrophic failure in this environment. The stated goal of providing peace of mind that isn't a luxury. It's the primary product when you consider the stakes are fire safety and structural integrity.
But every company claims to offer peace of mind. So let's focus on the 4 key differentiators they explicitly use to justify that claim. Why are these 4 pillars so essential for this specific kind of business?
Okay, let's start with the first one, expertise. In this market, expertise is the justification for the price.
Simple as that.
Pretty much. When a failure is hidden, like a cracked flue liner you can't see without a special camera, the customer has to trust that the technician diagnosed it correctly and knows how to fix it structurally.
So their claim of having seasoned professionals isn't just a boast.
It's a prerequisite for market entry at this level.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, the second pillar is customer approach prioritizing needs, working closely with the customer. How does that pillar mitigate the risk of hidden damage?
It's all about building confidence and transparency. Because the damage is so often unseen, the expert has to spend time explaining the problem. They use documentation, photos, videos, scope inspections.
So it's about mitigating skepticism.
Exactly. The customer needs assurance they aren't being sold an unnecessary, costly repair. And that requires clear, patient communication.
And the third and fourth are closely linked. Quality assurance and integrity.
Quality assurance. So precision and attention to detail, that's vital because these structural failures are exponential. If the new mortar fails quickly, the customer is right back at square one, but often with worse damage.
They have to guarantee the repair is as permanent as possible.
Given the environment, yes. And that brings us to integrity. This is maybe the most strategic pillar in this whole industry.
Why do you say that?
Because when you have that asymmetrical information dynamic, the expert knows everything, the customer knows almost nothing. Integrity is the non-negotiable foundation.
It has to be.
Absolutely. Honesty and transparency are fundamental because the cost of neglect or a faulty repair is so incredibly high.
Right. A company without integrity could easily upsell services or use cheap materials that fail.
And the customer wouldn't know for years until it's a catastrophe. So Select Chimney Services emphasizes integrity as a way of assuring the customer that they'll only propose necessary structural repairs aimed at long-term protection.
So it transforms a technical service into a relationship of trust.
A relationship built on high ethical standards, which is necessary when you're protecting someone's home against these expensive hidden failures. And this commitment, it extends to accessibility.
What do you mean by that?
They specifically aim to make professional care accessible through fair pricing, clear communication, and reliable workmanship.
Which is really a preventative strategy.
It is. They want homeowners to call them before the small issues. That minor water leak, the faint smoky smell escalate into the massive, costly structural catastrophes we've been talking about.
So what does this all mean? We've analyzed the environmental necessity, driven by the Maine climate. We've looked at the broad service scope that elevates their work from simple cleaning to comprehensive structural and fire safety care. And we've dug into the business philosophy centered on integrity and technical expertise that's required to manage the risks of these hidden defects.
Yeah.
It really paints a detailed picture of a regional company that has specifically tailored its deep technical skill set to the challenges of its specific environment.
It is the definition of a market adapting to its environmental stresses. They've become expert structural defenders of the New England home.
And as we conclude this deep dive, you should consider the broader lesson here. We often overlook the maintenance of essential, hidden structural elements like a chimney until there's a catastrophic failure.
A dangerous smoke issue or massive water damage that needs an insurance claim. So the provocative thought for you to carry forward is this. Specialized businesses, Intensely focused on hyperlocal environmental threats like the severity of Maine winters, they provide a critical, often unseen form of stability and protection to a community.
That's a great point.
Their business narrative shows that expert preventative care, tailored precisely to a localized environmental risk, is the most crucial form of long-term protection.
So you should think about it.
Think about how localized threats, whether they're geological, meteorological, architectural, how they drive the need for expert knowledge and specialized, trustworthy businesses in your own fields of interest. It reinforces the idea that your safety and structural longevity, they always start with preparation and specialized knowledge.
A deep dive into regional structural defense. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.